The Enterprise gets a distress call from a planet that is a weird carbon copy of Earth. When Kirk and the gang beam down, they find an almost post-apocalyptic world where all the adults are dead from a mysterious disease and all the children are jerks. But things suddenly get worse when the landing party get that same disease. It's a race against time in a world that's half Peter Pan and half Lord of the Flies, and our hero's only hope is a girl named Miri. Set your phasers to bonk bonk on the head and hit it. Hey! So we have two major guest stars in this episode. First, you got Kim Darby in the episode's title role. She had a lot of guest starring roles and a notable film role where she was Maddie Ross in the original True Grit. But for my money, she'll always be known as Lane Meyer's mom, Ginny, in the outstanding 80s comedy movie Better Off Dead. The other big guest star is Michael J. Pollard. This guy has 116 credits to his name and appeared in everything from Gunsmoke to Blossom, but I remember him most from Scrooged and one of my all-time favorite romantic comedies, Roxanne. It ain't my favorite rom-com, but it's up there. What? A possum can't like a good rom-com now and again? I got a heart. What's the matter with you? There's another guest star that gets a few lines, and he's one of those kids you're pretty sure you've seen him in other stuff. That's going to be your John Megna. He was Dill Harris in To Kill a Mockingbird and actually had a part in Godfather Part 2 as a young Hyman Roth, but his scene got cut. Oof, that's showbiz. Since we never got the scene, I can't get the image out of my head of him going, "Ma, I'm going to go take a nap now. If I wake up and there's milk and chocolate chip cookies on the table, I'll know I have a friend. If there isn't, I'll know I don't." That would have been amazing. Now I need to see a whole video of a kid version of Hyman Roth walking around. But enough digression. Let's get into the plot. The Enterprise gets what they call an Earth-style distress call from a planet, and when they investigate, they come upon a planet that is an exact copy of Earth. All the continents are the same, its mass and all that is the same. It's another Earth. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Yeoman Rand beam down, along with Ensign Fields and a guy who is credited as only Security Guard 1, both wearing red shirts. They beam down to discover that they're in a post-apocalyptic Mayberry, but are too late to catch Immortan Barney before he took off chasing after Thelma Lou Riosa. Andy Griffith jokes. That's what we got here, folks. So Spock looks around and figures that, by the looks of things, this stuff has been deteriorating for a few centuries. The group plays a game of hot tricycle, and McCoy loses because when he has it, a crazy disfigured guy comes shooting out of nowhere, claiming that the trike is his. While lamenting that the trike is broken, he has a seizure and then dies. He died as he lived, loving his trike. The landing party seems to hear some noises coming from various places, and trying to find out where they come from, they end up entering a building where they find a young girl named Miri hiding in a closet. When she comes out, she's scared to death of the landing party, and it takes them a while to calm her down. Spock takes the red shirts outside to scout around, and they hear the voices of children taunting them, but still can't figure out where it's coming from. Back in the building, Miri tells Kirk that the Grups got sick, and that made them violent, and the Onlys had to hide from them until they died. Kirk and Rand work out that Grups is her word for grown-ups, and that the Onlys must mean the kids. Kirk kind of walks the creepy tightrope and tries to calm Miri's fears about them by telling her she's pretty. Miri swoons. Of course she does, it's Captain Kirk. But when Kirk does that gently grab the lady's chin thing, it's revealed that he has a blue whelp on his hand. Miri freaks out, saying that Kirk has got the same disease that killed the Grups. So Miri takes the landing party to the hospital so that McCoy can work on finding a cure. Because it turns out they all have the disease, except Spock, being a Vulcan and whatnot, but he's still a carrier, so he's in hot water too. McCoy calls up Lieutenant Farrell to have some science stuff beamed down, and he gets to work. Kirk spends some of that crush capital and tells Miri, "Hey, go clean off that table, will you?" Spock finds some research papers that reveal that the disease is an accidental result of research into, quote, life prolongation, and that those experiments that created the disease happened 300 years ago. They also work out that the children have it too, but it only becomes deadly when they hit puberty, which means the kids are all more than 300 years old, even though they're still kids, mentally speaking. Speaking of kids, Kirk gets Miri to show him where the other kids are hiding. Cut to said place, and John, the leader of the kids, can't figure out why Miri is helping the grubs, considering the wonderful experience everyone had with the grubs the last time there were grubs, right? The kids seem determined not to let things get back to the way that they was in the, quote, before time. So John hatches a plan. He's noticed the grubs use little boxes to talk to one another and to a ship that must be far off someplace. So if they can steal those little boxes, the grubs will be cut off and all alone. And anything bad for the grubs is good for the onlys, right? But just then, Kirk and Miri come in, and the kids freeze for a second like cockroaches when you turn the lights on. But right then, another crazy infected person busts in and jumps on Kirk's back. All the kids scream and run away while Kirk tries to get Master Blaster over here off his back. As soon as he does, he stuns her, but the stun blast kills her. Miri says her name was Louise, and she was only a little bit older than Miri is. Then she does a 60s melodramatic hug thing on the captain. Back in the lab, Kirk goes, "Hey Bones, watch this. Hey Miri, I don't know, sharpen a bunch of pencils or something." See that? She just does whatever dumb stuff I tell her to do. McCoy goes, "Did you have another transporter accident or something?" Spock estimates that Miri has about a month left before the disease takes her, but the landing party will be dead in a week, but not before going crazy balls first. Spock and McCoy double their efforts to create a vaccine, but they suddenly hear the voices of the children taunting them. They all run out to try to find the kids, and while they're out, John sneaks into the lab through the air vent, grabs the communicators, and escapes. When the landing party gets back and sees that their communicators are gone, McCoy points out that without the communicators, they can't access the ship's computer, and without that, all hope for an effective vaccine is lost. They've also estimated that the area's food supply will last about 6 more months, and after that, disease or not, the kids will starve. The next day, everybody's getting testy. McCoy blows up at Kirk, Kirk bumps into Rand, making her drop some beakers, which sets her off, and she runs out of the room. In the hallway, Kirk tries to apologize, and she shows him how far the disease has spread on her. She breaks down crying, and Kirk holds her and tries to comfort her, and Miri sees this, and she don't take it too well. Well, she goes back to the other kids and says they should kidnap Rand. John says that's only getting one of them, and they can still do whatever they're trying to do with just one gone. Miri says it'll be 2 because Kirk will come and look for her, and they can get him too. After a commercial break, we discover that McCoy has isolated the bug causing all the problems, and he's worked out a possible vaccine. Problem is, without the computer on the ship, he can't determine the effective dosage. Too little and it don't work. Too much and it'll kill you deader than fidget spinners. Well, somehow the kids capture Rand, and Kirk has to persuade Miri to help him find her and the kids. He tells her that all the kids have the disease, and it will kill every one of them when they hit puberty. But it ain't going to be a problem for the youngest ones because they're going to starve first. Then he shows her that she's already got the disease on her arm. Well, she does the 60s hug thing again, and then takes Kirk to where the onlys have Rand. Kirk makes the same plea with John and the kids, but they don't buy it. And they surround Kirk and they beat him like he was the 62 Mets. But he manages to elude his pummelers and hits them with the Kirk speech, pointing out that they hate the grubs because they're violent and scary, but they're the ones being violent and scary now. Ha! Kirked. Well, while the rest of the landing party is out trying to find Miri and the captain, McCoy decides, to hell with it, and injects himself with a heroic dose of the vaccine. He screams and falls unconscious. Spock comes running in and tries his best not to call McCoy an idiot, and then Kirk and the kids come right behind him. Kirk and Spock take a closer look at McCoy's face and see that the whelps from the disease are disappearing. The vaccine works, and McCoy ain't dead. Hopefully, now that they have the communicators back, they can use the ship's computer to figure out a dosage that still works on the disease, but forgoes all that screaming and agony stuff. Back on the bridge, Ensigns Field and Security Guard 1 are carefully popping the champagne for making it through the episode alive. We also learned that the Enterprise left a medical team on the planet, while Space Central, whatever that is sending a full team to come and take care of the kids. Rand tells Kirk that Miri really loved him, and he says he don't get involved with older women. But he does miss the fact that he don't have someone around to make alphabetize his record collection for him. And with that, we roll credits. Great stuff. I'm not gonna lie, this ain't one of my favorite episodes. But there are some great lines in here.
This is the vaccine? That's what the computers will tell us. Without them, it could be a beaker full of death.
I like how every now and then the writers give Spock a weirdly dramatic or sarcastic line. This is definitely the former, and I love it. It's also worth pointing out that Beaker Full of Death is a great Tom Waits song.
You two will have to recreate the thinking. If you can isolate that virus, you'll be able to develop a vaccine.
Is that all, Captain? We have 5 days, you know.
I know.
Speaking of sarcasm, I like the way that McCoy delivers this sarcastic quip with no obvious sarcasm whatsoever. Totally straight. And Kirk laughing in response is not only a great way to show a little of the personality of both characters, but it also gives us another glimpse at the relationship between Kirk and McCoy, which, as I've said before, is my favorite character relationship in this series.
Something happened to her.
Don't you feel all right?
No, I don't feel all right. None of us feel all right. Can't you see what's going on?
You ever have one of those times when you're sitting in the middle of the floor and there's like 3 bookcases turned over and there's books everywhere and there's water shooting out of a broken sink and like maybe the couch is on fire or something and some idiot comes in and says, "Hey, everything okay?" Kirk's response to Miri asking if he feels all right perfectly personifies how I feel in those situations. I've felt that Kirk response many times. Shatner nails it. And this episode has probably one of the greatest debates between 2 characters in the whole series.
Blah, blah, blah.
No, blah, blah, blah!
They both make strong arguments, and while I lean more toward no blah, 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 I can still kind of see both sides of this. It's something to think about. I will say that I like the slang the kids have developed over time. Grups, onlys, foolies, the before time. It all has that nice post-apocalyptic feel to it. And I also like the authentic kid touch of when Miri is saying she's going to tell Rand that one of the kids is hurt in order to lure her away. John Megna's character wants her to say it's him that's hurt. It's a really authentic kid thing to want, you know? And it's a great juxtaposition between these kids hatching a pretty sinister kidnapping plot, but them still being kids. It's a nice touch. And finally, something I can't really decide if it's great stuff or goof.
How old is this thing?
About 300 years.
They bust in like special forces breaching a room. There's an unknown possible threat in the closet. And Kirk is like, "All right, get ready to move, on target. Oh, wait, quick, Spock, how old is this piano?" Like, how easily distracted is this guy? I mean, if Kirk had seen a shiny rock in Balance of Terror or someone had jingled their keys at the wrong moment, that fight could have gone in a whole different direction, huh? The goof. So even before the credits in this episode, we have a major bit of goof here. What purpose does it serve to have the planet be an exact copy of Earth? You don't gotta be possum science to know that's absurdly improbable. And it has nothing to do with the story. So what's the point of that? Earth-like planet with the same atmosphere? That's fine. It makes it so they can film outside and stuff. But to have it have the exact same continents? What's that about? There have been attempts in novels and other apocrypha to explain this, but whatever, it don't make no sense. It's weird that they make such a big deal of the planet being another Earth, but never mention it again in the episode. It seems like they could have just made this like a long-lost Earth colony and let that explain why there's humans and the town looks like the Desilu backlot, you know? You ever get the feeling that sometimes the writers get the characters into a situation they don't really know how to get them out of? Watch how Kirk gets away from the kids surrounding him, beating him with the clubs and the hammers and the whatnot. It's like he just kind of gets bored with being whacked by the troop of murder scouts and just walks off. It's such a weird, awkward moment. They don't stop him. They don't follow him, keeping up the whacking. Everybody just kind of runs out of gumption. What is that about? The concept of 300-year-old children is itself pretty goofy. They've just been running around playing games for 300 years? They're all wearing 300-year-old clothes? In 300 years, no kid has broken their leg or arm falling off the jungle gym? What about the rest of the planet? Where are the other kids? And you're telling me that this has been going on for 300 years and the Enterprise just happened to show up a couple of months before the food ran out? Well, that was lucky. There are so many problems with this episode's premise that it's hard to point out any of them without feeling like you need to point out all of them, you know? And some of it is the usual sci-fi tropes, like the entire planet being represented by 1 square mile of land, and that goes for the climate, culture, biology, and all that. But a lot of it is just that the premise ain't that well thought out. 300 years is way too long for these kids to have been kids, and there not being a significant change in clothing, housing, even some kind of agricultural or hunting thing. You're telling me that the contents of the local sack and save lasted 300 years without going bad or nothing? And that's if there was enough food for these kids for that long in the first place. They probably should have knocked that back to 100 years, maybe even 50. I mean, all episodes of science fiction have this problem to an extent. It's just this one seems to take it to a whole new level. But that ain't the point, as we'll explore in Ruminations. So first, quick note on the episode. This is the last appearance of Jim Goodwin as Lieutenant Farrell. He was a buddy of producer John D.F. Black, and this episode was the transition between Black going out and new producer Gene Coon coming in. Both are on the credits for this episode, but next episode, Black is gone. And I guess he was the only one who liked Goodwin's acting because once Black was out, so was Goodwin. I kind of feel bad for the guy, but Gene Coon would end up being a huge asset for the series. So when all is said and done, it's a good thing that he came on board. And if we have to sacrifice Lieutenant Farrell for that, well, I think it's a more than reasonable price to pay. So this episode is another entry in the category of episodes that say, don't play God. We just had What Are Little Girls Made Of a couple of episodes ago, which was also a mad scientist episode, but he was trying to cheat death and gain immortality through robot bodies. Now you got the people from this planet trying to achieve the same thing through some kind of immortality serum. Star Trek is going to take this position a few more times before the series is over, too. It's interesting because it's such a forward-thinking show otherwise, but seeking immortality is a cardinal sin, apparently, and only leads to destruction. Either personal destruction like Roger Corby, or in the case of Miri's planet, global annihilation. There's no gray area there. But it's interesting to note that while the episode itself presents this attempt at immortality as a more or less objectively bad thing, neither spokesman for science, Spock or McCoy, condemn these scientists for what they were trying to do. Usually, someone wearing a blue shirt has some moral objection to this kind of thing when it comes up. But that ain't the case here. But that's pretty much all this episode has message-wise. There's a line from Kirk about how children have a distinctive need for parents and want to be told right from wrong, that whole Lord of the Flies thing, but turns around and shows us a bunch of kids who made it 300 friggin' years without adults, so I don't know how well this episode backs up that statement. I think another message that should be taken from this episode is that if there's someone who has a crush on you, you don't use that crush as leverage to manipulate them into doing stupid menial tasks for you. 300 years old or not, that still makes you an asshole. So there you have it, Miri. This is a pretty weird one, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode down there in the comments. Was there some great stuff or goof I didn't mention? Let me know about it. And while you're down there, help the channel out by hitting that like button so I know you dug the show. And don't forget that subscribe button so you don't miss being a part of all of the excitement of watching stuff with me, Possum Rob. And if you're in a position to do so, consider supporting the channel with a channel membership. Just hit that join button and you'll get way early access to my full episode commentary tracks for sci-fi hit shows The Expanse and Babylon 5. I'm even thinking about some other stuff to put up over there. Maybe even some behind the scenes stuff. So come and join us. We're having lots of fun over there. Don't forget Possum merch over at adstudiosmerch.com. And hey, I have a homework assignment for you guys. I want to do a Q&A episode pretty soon. So send me any kind of question you want to ask to accidentallyderivative@gmail.com. Even if you're watching this episode years from now, first, hey, how you doing? Have we got jetpacks yet? But still send me those questions. No matter when it is, if I get enough questions, I'll do an answer video. Next up, a Shakespearean acting troupe comes aboard the Enterprise, but there's something familiar about their lead actor. Is he just a wandering troubadour trying to make a living treading the boards? Or is he hiding something much, much darker? The next episode's The Thing, wherein we'll catch the conscience of the king. Until then, possum friends are awesome friends. Take it easy, all right? Later.